Most people will never change their circumstances because most people would rather be entertained than educated. Gossip, a variety of random nonsense content, play and rumours keep the masses occupied. And that was posted on Instagram by Earn Your Leisure. Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of Tuesday's podcast episode. This is the Toya Talks podcast. I am your host each and every week, Toya Washington. Welcome and thank you for joining me again this week, as you guys always do. Welcome to all my returning listeners and welcome to any new listeners. If this is your first time, then you know the vibe. Make sure you reacquaint yourself with all our previous episodes. And if you want to get a flavour of my personality and who I am, I do have a YouTube channel, At Home with Toya. And of course, I am on social media, predominantly Instagram. My Instagram handle is Toya_Washington. So before we get started on this episode, I really want to do a big shout out to a consultant anaesthetist called Steve James at the King's College Hospital in London. And he recently was a part of some type of walkthrough of the health secretary, and the health secretary put the medical professionals on the spot and asked them how they felt about mandatory jabs. And it is a very contentious issue within the NHS. Doctors, nurses, anaesthetists, and just medical professionals as a whole, making it mandatory that in order for them to continue working, they need to get vaccinated or risk losing their jobs. And when the health secretary asked some of the medical professionals for their view, they were quite quiet. But Steve James spoke out, and he spoke about his unwillingness to be vaccinated, and spoke about how he obviously has had COVID before and therefore has natural antibodies. And he spoke quite clearly and candidly about his stance on being vaccinated and the reasons why. And what I'll do is I'll see if I can find the video. I'll put a link in the summary box to this episode so you guys can go and have a look and draw your own conclusions. What I will say is this is the very first time a medical professional has had the opportunity, I would say the opportunity, in such a setting as like some type of a medical walkthrough with the health secretary of a Mickey Mouse government, and being able to, well, first of all, let's be honest, he didn't just come out with his view. He was pressured to speak. When the health secretary asked the other medical professionals, they were hesitant and they were clearly reluctant to speak. And he had to ask the question 2-3 times before he got an answer. And this doctor stepped up. This anaesthetist stepped up. What I hope is that he will not be used as a scapegoat for speaking the truth. And what I fully support is the white people of this country really fighting that good fight, and we will cheer them on, because I genuinely think that this government and the way they have managed things as a whole, you guys know where I stand on it, but there was a comfort that I felt that for once we had some honesty, and it's an honesty that we haven't received since the start of this COVID. So I'm really happy that someone spoke out and was brave enough to. I just hope that he won't be now used as a scapegoat. And I think the NHS and a lot of the medical professionals, they should be aware of the power that they yield. Firstly, we have a lot of COVID cases here in the UK, and a lot of these COVID cases has meant that irrespective of what the isolation rules are, people are too sick to go into work. And much of it has hit the medical professionals, meaning that a lot of them have been unable to attend work and therefore look after patients. And as a result, there have been severe staff shortages. And what that is demonstrating is if the medical professionals came together and said we're not going to get vaccinated, the likelihood of them losing their job is not only extremely slim, but it's near impossible. They barely have medical professionals as it is because of the COVID cases. But can you imagine if there was a mutiny with all the medical professionals, they just said, okay, fine. It's not going to happen. But again, I think it's down to us really understanding what our strengths are when we come together. And I'm hoping that the medical professionals are strong enough within themselves to understand the power that they yield and come together and push against this mandatory need to be vaccinated, which for me is a clear breach of people's human rights and the inability for people to be able to stand 10 toes in their views. For example, whenever I tell people that I've had COVID, the first question I'm asked is if I'm vaccinated. And I challenged somebody recently and I said, if the answer is no, it doesn't mean I was deserving of catching COVID, because whether I was vaccinated or not, the risk of getting COVID is the same as being unvaccinated. And that person was quiet. We are entering a phase of vaccinated versus unvaccinated, and mandatory yielding the iron fist of ensuring that people follow suit because the government says so, but never follows their own rules. It's a really dangerous space to be in. Equally as well, I shared on Instagram, and obviously on the last week's podcast episode, the first one of 2022, my experiences of COVID. And yesterday, yesterday on Saturday on Instagram, I did say that my period stopped, was delayed, and it was the first time my period has ever been delayed. And luckily, by the grace of God, I am having a period currently, although a light period. So it has affected me, and I think it was important for me to share that. And my DMs were flooded with women in the same position, vaccinated, unvaccinated, speaking about, the side effects of them being vaccinated and how it's affected their menstrual cycle. One lady hasn't seen her period for 4 months. Another lady who was unvaccinated, and it did interrupt her period, and she really internalized it. And then it wasn't until that she heard my Instagram and my story that she knew that she wasn't alone. And that is the power of social media. That is the power of podcasting, being able to speak on what needs to be spoken, and you don't know who's going to listen, be inspired or feel comfortable and comforted by what you say, and also being able to educate people, give them the tools to navigate work and life. And that is why I do what I do, and I'm very open in sharing certain things, and there's certain things I keep to myself, and people know that I found the balance between sharing to inform but still maintaining a level of privacy for myself. But I definitely feel as though the lack of honesty and information that we're getting from the government, it does require us as a community to be honest about our own personal experiences, that will then feed into how we make informed decisions about being vaccinated, remaining unvaccinated, or considering the vaccine. And I would always say that my stance is to always be informed. I'm that type of person that I know that I can learn from anywhere, and I do learn from anywhere and from everyone. I'm not sheep. I just don't do things because somebody's asked me to do it, because ultimately I bear the consequences of any decisions I make about my health and my life. Therefore, I would rather make a decision based on an informed view, having done all the research, and feel comfortable that I'm able to logically explain to myself why I'm making a particular decision. And that has seen me through my entire life. I've never just done something because someone said it to me. And I definitely feel as though it was inevitable that I was going to catch COVID, as it is for everybody. I do think it's inevitable. Everybody's going to catch COVID. Now, how people react to it is different. Some people who have caught COVID and unvaccinated have described it as just a common flu or a cold-like sensation, and they've had to work through it. Other people have been like me, who it's been really, really bad. Some people who are vaccinated have had the exact same experience as me. So let's not kind of like gaslight people into, first of all, let's not gaslight people. Secondly of all, let's not allow the government to manipulate us into separating how we treat the vaccinated and unvaccinated. And that's all I'm going to say on that. So obviously, we all saw the interview by Steve Bartlett, and he has a podcast called The Diary of a CEO. And he had an interview with Molly May, which, to be honest with you, I was a bit surprised to see Molly May on there. And I was really happy when Steve said that she doesn't normally do interviews like this. And that was my view too. Like, she doesn't usually do interviews like that. So I was quite surprised to see her on that particular podcast. But she is a multi-millionaire, a CEO in her own right. She has her own limited company. She's a CEO of her company, the director of her company. And she has seen success at such a rapid speed that it's interesting to kind of get her view about her career, her success, her strategy, and also where she stands in how she processes her success. Like, what was the plan? Was there a plan? How did you execute that plan? What is your mindset? And how do you move forward in your career? So obviously, what caused controversy last week was that Molly May had said there is 24 Beyonce has 24 hours in a day, and I'm not going to repeat everything she said. We all know, okay? It's been all over the blogs, all over the media, all over Twitter. And to be honest with you, okay, so I've listened to the interview, and I listened on YouTube. I listened on the Spotify, and it was really important for me to listen to it a couple of times. So in total, I've listened to it 4 times. I listened to it the first time, like all of us, when we saw like the snapshot, like that little segment of what she said about Beyonce and the 24 hours a day and things like that. And I know already that triggering black women is like a marketing strategy for non-black people. So I already know that for myself, I've made a conscious decision that I'm not going to allow white people to trigger me in the way that they're used to triggering us. Because what happens is they will trigger us, and that will be record numbers of profit that they will make that week off the backs of triggering us and distressing us as black women. That's the first thing. Secondly, it was really interesting to see everybody else's reactions and the things that they said. And as the week progressed, obviously I listened to it again, and then I listened to it without kind of watching the YouTube video. I just wanted to listen to it as I would do any podcast. And obviously on my social media, I did say that I would talk about it. And there was a couple of people in my DM saying that they were surprised that I would talk about Molly May. That one lady said, you know, Toya, I didn't think you'd talk about it, but I'm not saying I didn't want you to. It's just that, you know, Molly May, she just has a very different approach and mindset to you. And I said, really? Does she? And there were some people that were really triggered, and they were trying to have a debate in my DMs. And I said it today on Instagram, I'm going to say it again on the podcast. My DMs is not an opportunity or a forum to have a debate. I'm not going to debate with you, okay? We can have a difference of opinion, but I've never shared an opinion about Molly May until today. So let's not get over familiar with the access that social media gives us. I think that everybody's entitled to an opinion, but I don't have time to debate my view. My view is my view, and I've taken the time to inform my view. And I think it's important that when I come on a podcast, that not only do I teach you guys and show you guys another school of thought, but I really want to give people the tools to be able to go out in the world and not only be successful, but be able to navigate white spaces and non-black spaces. That to me is my ultimate goal. So in listening to what Molly May said, let it be known now, I think that what she said was not only delivered in poor taste, but was very reminiscent of white privilege and her lack of proximity to struggle. Yeah, she's 22 years old, and that is very, very important, because at 22 I was in the club. At 22 I was at Fridge nightclub in Brixton. I was at Midnight Mass in Brixton. At 22 I was trying some of the best cocktails I thought I had ever tasted. It was just cheap shit. And at 22 I was eating in restaurants, I was dating people, I was having the best time of my life. I was so far removed to having any business mindset. I was really, really, really immature. And something that I did recognise and accept with Molly May is that not only is she young, but she doesn't have a lot of life experience. So when she talks about life, I take it with a pinch of salt, because at 22, I mean, to be fair, I don't know, and I'm not trying to like insult anyone that's 22 or anything. We've all been 22, right? But how much life experience am I expecting you to have at 22 that will inform a conversation about struggle in life? You know, we're looking at a blonde, pretty white woman that has white privilege, she has pretty privilege, and she had 2 parents that worked for the Met Police. They were police officers. So already her start is different from ours. Now, do we all have 24 hours in a day? We all have 24 hours in a day. But the difference is we don't all have the same 24 hours in a day, because our start in life is different. And I'm speaking to my black queens. This is where we gather and talk. We are gathered here today to talk, yeah? So we know as black women that we can't really relate to certain things that Molly May says, because not only is she a white privileged woman, but as black women, we don't have access to any type of privilege. Isn't this one of the reasons why we've created the Toya Talks podcast? Because we understand to navigate life and the world of work is slightly different for us. But the outrage and the triggering that people felt, like there were so many rooms on Clubhouse, there were so many different thread conversations on Twitter, and I was a little bit disappointed. I was disappointed because I was in like Clubhouse rooms. I was just listening, you know. I don't particularly go on stage. I don't do any of that. I listen. I listen to learn. I genuinely just listen to learn. I don't listen to respond. So that's why you will see me on Clubhouse. Unless I've opened a room that relates to the Toy Talks podcast and platform, then I'm listening to learn. And a lot of the rooms I'm in are more black spaces. And I was really disappointed in a couple of spaces that I was in where people were talking and it just felt very personal towards Molly May, and I'm not defending her. People were going on Company's House to see, like, when she last filed taxes, to see if she is actually the director of her company, all of this shit. And all that time invested, half of these people have never looked at their employment contract. Half of these people investing the time to go through Company's House have never taken the time to read their company policies, and then find themselves in situations at work and suddenly become oblivious of how their organisation works and understanding their contract. But you've got time to go to Company's House and do all of that shit. For me, I just kind of felt, as black women, when are we going to take the time to make the decision to not allow white people to use us as marketing strategy by triggering us to get us to then feed into the money machine that is, for example, for the based on what we're talking about, which is Molly May. Now, there were things that I did learn from Molly May, and I wrote 2 pages within my notebooks of things that I had learned. And that's because I'm a businesswoman, and we are all businesswomen. I've told you that. You don't necessarily have to have a business to be a businesswoman, albeit that I do have 2 businesses. But being in the world of work, you are a businesswoman too. And I've spoken about this before in previous episodes. Now, as a businesswoman, I know how I run my businesses. I know how I run my career. And I know the decisions that I've made and have had to make based on experience and based on the fact that I work in white spaces. And number one, her mentality in business is what is required as a starting point to even smell success. It's the energies that you keep around you. It is the idea that you can have a manager, and that is a privilege on its own, to have a manager who you feel that you can trust so much that shares the same vision as you. It's not many people that have that. That's the first thing. But even before we go to the management, her starting in life has not been the same as ours. A lot of us are children of first generation immigrants. Some people, their starting point is maybe they have never known their parents before. Some people grew up in foster care. We do not have the same 24 hours a day. Our starting points are not all the same. And the foundations in which we were raised are all really, really different. I completely understand and accept that what she said was wrong. It was bang out of order, and it was very distasteful, because it's almost assuming that we all have the same starting position in life, and she completely ignores fundamental things, like, for example, if somebody has a particular disability that makes it difficult for them to, for example, to go to the job centre because they're unemployed or whatever their situation is, and get their benefits. Maybe that particular job centre doesn't have a ramp for them to be able to push the wheelchair up there. And does that mean that they don't have access to their benefits? That puts them at a disadvantageous position. Everybody has a different starting position and has a different life that they lead. So in as much as there is 24 hours in a day, our 24 hours is very different. And her inability to understand and accept that was further demonstrated when she didn't even herself come out and kind of speak about it. She got her PR to kind of clean up the mess last week. I don't know if you guys noticed that. And that's another way of her distancing herself and having to deal with this, and having to admit that actually she's short-sighted, because she has had a privilege that the average person in society has not had. I don't like this whole rhetoric of kind of this hustle culture mentality, because it's quite dangerous. And I'll just work harder. And I've said this before. Patricia Bright last year said something a little bit similar. And to me, I just think it's disgusting when people say work hard. It's the assumption that we're not working hard already. But the thing is, not everybody's exposed to certain opportunities. And actually, we're living in a society where, okay, take for instance, if you are an ethnic minority, have parents from ethnic minority backgrounds, we are all, and at one stage have been worried about the legislation that Priti Patel has brought in, that basically strips you of your citizenship and effectively places you in a position where, for example, for me, they can send me back to Nigeria, where I've never grown up. I was born and raised here in the UK, but because my parents are Nigerian, they can do that. Molly May doesn't have to consider that. And again, privilege. So that doesn't go above my head at all. But I want to just move back into kind of what I learned from her. I learned about how she sees business and how she runs her business. She didn't give us the blueprint, she gave us crumbs. But from crumbs, I'll make a cake. Yeah? And there was certain things that she has done within her life where she has placed herself in a position. So, for example, Love Island was a business move. Don't mind kind of her skirting around the topic. It was a business move for her. She you guys don't remember this, right? Some of you may not. She was on Love Island and had scheduled videos on her YouTube channel to go out. If that isn't business minded, I don't know what is. She's a businesswoman through and through. There was a strategy, albeit maybe it wasn't like set in stone, but she had a clear vision of what she was trying to achieve. So, my fellow queens, I talk about that vision with your vision boards and how you move and project managing your career and understanding that you're the architect of your career and your life. I speak to you about vision boards all the time, but some of you are not accepting that you can only manifest what you can see. You have to have a plan. You have to have a vision. Success is not necessarily things that we as Black women are born into. We have to define success, create a plan for success, and execute so that we can achieve that success. I put my hands on my heart and say, for a long time, I never considered myself a successful Black woman because I allowed society to dictate what success meant. Is being rich being successful? You know, what does success mean? And I think as the year progresses, I'm going to define what success means to me, because I'm able to sit here comfortably and say to you, I'm a successful Black woman. But success is different for different people. And there are people that don't want to be rich, and that's okay. But that doesn't mean they're any less successful in what they do. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? Now, there is a morality issue here as well, because, you know, she is the creative director, as in Molly May is the creative director for PLT. And we already know that the ethics in PLT and how they produce their clothes and the labour employed to produce their clothes is not necessarily ethical. But unless those people are making the sacrifice to do those jobs, Molly May would not be the creative director of anything. And Umar would not have a multi-million-pound brand that is Pretty Little Thing. And those people are working often 12, 16-hour shifts. And there was this video where Molly May was in a Pretty Little Thing warehouse, and one of them was talking about doing a 12-hour shift, and Molly May looked shocked. And I was just like, are you that out of touch with reality that you don't recognise that you are working for a company where people have dedicated their lives so that you can be successful? People have dedicated their lives so that you can have a position whereby you can call yourself a creative director. But let's be honest, there would be no directing any creativity if it wasn't for those people in the warehouses, in the factories, producing these clothes, producing these products. And that lends itself to her level of immaturity and depth of thinking. I will say that for me personally, I'm not Molly May's audience, and you've got to remember as well, Molly May is very particular in how she delivers her content, and her audience are loyal to her. She's talking about getting 25,000 followers a day. She's on par with Kim Kardashian. I don't think you're understanding that by the end of the year they will be neck and neck. That's how I see Molly May, and I definitely feel as though with Molly May there is a growth that she needs to do, like just from a maturity level. But can you imagine at 22, if this is where she is now, where she'll be at 25, where she'll be at 30, like she is next level, okay? And let it not also go above our heads that she basically said a lot of people who went into Love Island, obviously they went in there for different things and things like that, but she basically said, you know, I've told them to do certain things and a lot of them aren't doing it. So let's take, for example, Kaz. I genuinely thought that Kaz would do well, but I knew that she wouldn't see the same level as Molly May. And again, it comes from the societal structures of racism. Let's just be honest. Kaz is a beautiful black queen. She has a great personality. She carried the Love Island last year, but yet she hasn't seen the level of success as Molly May. Molly May didn't even win in her year. That is how endemic and systematic racism is, and how the societal structures are there to benefit non-black people. But Molly May doesn't want to have that conversation because she can't relate, because she's working within a system that promotes her success. But as black women, I'm going to sit here comfortably and say this to you. The success I've seen in my career and my life has come from studying white people. I've told you this before. It's studying white people who created the constructs that I work in, and non-black people who also benefit from those constructs in a way that black people don't. I've studied these people. I know how to talk to these people. I see them a mile off. I've done my due diligence. I've understood that the only way to be successful is to navigate these people, navigate these structures, and recognize that at every level there is a ceiling. So for example, I've never seen success in one job, ever. I've only seen success in my career when I've recognized when I've peaked or I've reached, you know, certain milestones and I've achieved all my objectives and then moved on. For me, the key was knowing when to move on. That was the key for me. And in knowing when to move on, it meant that my title changed, I became more senior, and I earned more money. And when I started earning more money, I recognized that in as much as, you know, one would like to kind of rise up the ranks in a particular role, that wasn't enough for me in terms of what I had defined as success. So in order for me to reach my full potential, I had to move on. And I've shared with you that consulting was probably the best thing I ever did, but I recognize that it's not for everybody, and that's fine. But you can still move from different companies to attain that success. And that is the point, isn't it? It's understanding how these structures work, how they hinder the success of black women, and understand how to navigate them. So I understood that in terms of my career and to see progress, to navigate those structures, one of the things I needed to do is have an objective, achieve it, and move on. And there's so many other things as well, and we've discussed them previously before. But that, by way of example, I'm just trying to let you guys know that for us as black women, and it's not even let you guys know because we know it already, how we see success is different from white people who have privilege. It has to be different, and it's not fair. We're living in a society that is not fair. And to be honest, I don't think this society ever will be. Not when you have the likes of Priti Patel, you know, passing legislation that is just utterly unbelievable. You would just never believe that she is herself an ethnic minority. And I say ethnic minority, you guys know full well that I hate that term, but you know what I'm trying to say. I've accepted that we're living in a society that is just not fair. And it is very cumbersome, and it's very tiring, and it's very exhausting to have to accept that and know that in order for us to attain any type of success, we're continuously having to push ourselves to either break ceilings, recognize ceilings, navigate ceilings, and avoid ceilings. And that is very, very tiring. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you, especially when, you know, the rhetoric of work hard. Listen, in every job I've ever had in my life, everybody's always worked hard. We work hard to almost infer or allude to the fact that we're not working hard enough in itself is toxic, because no matter how hard you work, if you work hard, if you do not have opportunities, how are you able to be able to progress? So for example, you work really hard at work, but you're always overlooked for a promotion. Work harder. You've been there 5 years. You're not going to get that promotion. And if you do, it won't be the promotion that everybody else gets. It will be something less than that, and you're then told to accept that as being a good thing. You know, that's not enough. You know, that are we saying that person hasn't worked hard? Of course the person's worked hard, but the structures in which we're working hard under are not created for the benefit of us. Allow for above average results. Being average is not going to make you successful. Sorry, but it won't. Being average, if you have a vision of success, if you have a vision of being great, if you have a vision of greatness, if you want to be rich, then you can't be average. And that's the truth. And there is a lot of people that walk in delusion of thinking that if you're average for long enough, then success will come. And that's not how it works. You know, there's so many episodes that we have in the Toya Talks podcast catalogue. And I talk about walking in the wilderness, and that is the episode titled Walking in the Wilderness and Understanding Your Purpose. I think that's the start. Understanding what you're great at, understanding what you're good at, understanding what you need to perfect, understand what you need to work on, understanding what your purpose is. And sometimes that takes years. But you can't be average and then expect to get exceptional results. That's not how it works. There is sacrifice required, there is investment required. And equally as well, I think environment plays a big role, a massive role in success as well. Like I told you guys, when I grew up in Tottenham, I didn't know anything about kind of central London and the working world and all these massive offices and KPMG and all of these big companies. I didn't know any of that. My access to that was the teachers who lived in the suburbs or who lived in countryside that would come into the school and teach us. And I would notice that their shoes were a bit more shinier. Their suits were a bit more fitted. And then you start to understand that there is, oh my God, these people are not, they don't live in the same areas as me. And then you do your work experience, or then you might, I don't know, go to central London, or maybe you go and work in a certain place and then you realise that there's a whole bigger world outside of the environment you're in. Environment to me is huge. You know, everyone knows where I grew up, a Tottenham girl, born and raised, but not Tottenham now. Like when I go to Tottenham now, I'm shocked because it's so different. There's a lot more money in Tottenham through lottery funding. But I did recognise that my environment had to change for me to be able to experience certain things and for me to allow my mind to accept that there was a bigger world outside of the world that I currently lived in. And when my environment changed, my mentality also started changing. And even though we are very different from Molly May, her environment changed. She grew up in Hitchin and then she decided to move to Manchester. That is her basically saying that in order for her to kind of go to the next stage of what she was trying to manifest, her environment had to change. Environment is so important. And I have a podcast episode ready and waiting to discuss it in depth because there's something that I need to tell you guys that I haven't been able to about environment. But I think we're ready to have that conversation because I feel like it's quite a deep topic. It's really, really deep because what we're doing is shaking the foundation of what we know. And I think environment is the difference between what you see, what you allow yourself to see, what you allow yourself to imagine and manifest. And isn't this also the reason why in workplaces, a lot of us have visions of wanting to work in certain organisations that are maybe bigger than the ones we are now, because we also subconsciously accept that in order to see success in certain areas, our environment needs to change. And again, I think this is the reason why I listened to Molly May's interview away from YouTube and just listened to it on Spotify as well the last time I listened to it, because when I look at Molly May, she represents to me the average white woman. That's who she represents. But I wanted to hear her. I didn't want to see her. I know what you look like, babes. I wanted to hear her. I wanted to understand, like, maybe this is part of my dyslexia as well, how people put sentences together and how they describe certain things and what people are actually saying, like what they are alluding to. I'm very perceptive about things like that. And I definitely will say that her work ethic is 10 out of 10. You cannot in good faith rubbish her work ethic. Her work ethic is second to none. Her mentality when it comes to friends and the people she keeps around her is akin to what I do. You guys know, I tell you guys all the time. And I think at 22, to be as mature enough to understand that, to me, is absolutely amazing. It is, and I have to give credit where it's due. Relatability. I can't relate to Molly May in that way, but I do relate to her on a business level. I do. I think it's important for us to understand that you can learn from anyone. You have to get past what she has said to trigger us, remove the weeds, and get to the roots. And I'll tell you this, when I decided that I wanted to go back to YouTube, I had already gotten rid of all my equipment. I had a DSLR Canon camera, I had the whole setup, I had soft light boxes, I had everything when I was on YouTube previously. But obviously I left YouTube, I didn't have those things anymore. And I know that one of the biggest YouTubers is Molly May. And I sat there and watched her. I watched her YouTube. I watched quite a few videos. I loved the setup, I loved the aesthetics, I loved everything. And I thought, what equipment is she using? And one day she shared on the vlogs and I think on social media at some point as well, all her equipment. And I bought all her equipment. Everything she showed, I bought. And that is the power of influencing as well. But I understood that in order for me to come back into this arena, I had to step it up. And my dad always said, don't expect people to invest in you if you're not willing to invest in yourself. And that for me should demonstrate to you that you can learn from anyone. You can pick things up from anyone. So I bought all that equipment. Obviously did all my research as well, because it's not enough for me to just buy it. I had to do all my research, but I needed a starting point. Bought all the equipment, and it was probably some of the best investments that I've made into committing myself to vlogging. Expensive, yeah, but I work hard like we all do to be able to make the sacrifice to afford those things. That should go to show you that you can just learn from anyone. Sometimes we are so caught up in the smoke screen of things that we don't allow ourselves to pick the knowledge. And this, I believe, is a weapon that's often used within our community. Trigger black women enough so that we are distracted by the headline rather than reading the story. And you guys know, like, I love us as queens. I want us to all be successful. I want us to all learn and grow and rise and soar. But there has to be an element of reality that we place in understanding this interview. And I'm hoping that once this episode goes out and you guys listen to it, some of you, if not all of you, will go back and listen to Molly May's interview with Steve Bartlett on Spotify. Because if you can't pick a couple of things to learn from, you ain't ready to work through what is triggering you. Do you guys remember a young lady, I think it was like 2 years ago now, black woman, and she was on Twitter, and she basically shared with everybody that she's on 6 figures. And don't get me wrong, like, her delivery wasn't great, okay, but the essence of what she was saying is effectively, this is how she's done it, and da-da-da. And the backlash that she got, and I shared my opinion back then, was disgraceful. It was disgraceful because a lot of the backlash came from our community. It was disgraceful because of the lengths that people went to try and drag her down. And the fact that people were saying, well, prove it. Prove it. If you're on 6 figures, prove it. You see, when a white person tells us something, we're more likely to believe it than if one of our own tells us. That is crazy to me. I believed her immediately when she said it. I did. I don't need her to prove anything to me. I want to know what I can learn from you. That's what that's what I want to know. And because of that whole situation, it fed into my view anyway that I'm not going to ever share how much I earn from my businesses, how much I earn from my career. I'm not willing to do it just yet. Because I definitely feel as though when that black queen shared that, it triggered people. And it triggered people because I think it shook the foundations of the possibilities of what everyone could possibly earn and currently are not. But to go to the extent of finding out her employer, calling her employer and saying to her employer, This woman is releasing secrets, and she's sharing personal information that's personal to your company, and they got her sacked. This is the society that we live in. They got her sacked. That will always leave a really sour taste in my mouth. Always. Because number one, maybe her delivery was wrong, but are we really now calling people's workplaces up and doing that? Are we actually really doing that? Are we really placing ourselves in situations where we are so triggered by other people's situations, other people's testimonies, or whatever it is, that we're willing to seek out people's workplaces to get people fired, that we're willing to go on company's house to justify certain things? Like, why are we doing that? Why are we not using that same time and energy to invest in ourselves? Why are we not taking the time to do the research on the things that we want to do and achieve and manifest? Why are we not taking the time to understand our employment contracts? Why are we not doing that? Why is there so much time for others more than the time that we'll give ourselves? Why? Why do we get so caught up in the smokescreen of things that rather than understand that there are gems to be picked for our own success, we already assume that we won't be successful? And I believe it's the seeds sown by societal structures. It takes a lot to exist in a world or to exist in a society that constantly tries to drag us down. I get that. I'm there. I understand it. But it doesn't go above my head that if I had the same mentality and opportunities that Molly May had when I went into Big Brother, I would have made a lot more money than I did. If I had access to social media in the way that Molly May has now, I would have made a lot more money. And if I had a strategy before going into Big Brother, I would have made a lot more money. Because let's be honest, the reason I went into Big Brother was to be famous, to make money and create opportunities for me in Nigeria and possibly here in the UK. But I was fixated on Nigeria. But I never had a plan. I never had a structure. I never had a Fran as a manager. I never had guidance. I was just winging it. And as black women, we don't have wing it. Wing it doesn't apply to us. We can't just wing it. There has to be a thought process behind it. We can't just wing it. It doesn't work like that. There has to be a strategy. Everything in my business has to be a strategy. It has to. You know, I would love to have a manager that really understood what, you know, the vision of what I do and everything else. But I don't have that. I work like everybody else. I'm a consultant. I don't have brands collabing and telling me, oh, we're going to invest in Toya Talks. Every single thing that you have seen in Toya Talks has been my own money. From the live event, from the apparel, from the collaboration, the stationery, from the podcast, from the equipment, from everything has been my money. I've spent my money because I genuinely believe in what I do and I'm investing in myself. We can't even half of the black influencers find it difficult to get paid after they've done a campaign in a way that white women have never had to experience. So when Molly May says we have the, same 24 hours as Beyonce, first of all, I don't know why she's bringing Beyonce into this. Again, triggering black women. But we don't all have the same 24 hours because we don't all have the same opportunities and we're not all working on an even playing field. And that's a fact. But is that enough for me to spend my weeks kind of going on Clubhouse, talking, going on Twitter, tweeting, getting angry? Like, I don't have time for that. I personally don't. But what I do have time for is recognising marketing strategies that people use to trigger us as a community. We spend a lot of money into these businesses. We account for at least 50% of all the money that we invest in buying clothes and buying all this stuff. Yet they don't target us. They don't market for us. They're not inclusive. I'm very, 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 very intentional about where I spend my money because I understand the power of the coin. Through COVID, have we not understood the power of our money and our coins? Let me give you an example of something. I had a nail tech, and if you are on my Instagram, you'll see she is probably one of the best nail techs I've ever had. She's amazing. She's really, really good at what she does. She's a white lady. Now, in order to book her services, It's through Instagram. I found her through Instagram. I found her. No. I found her where I live. There is a Facebook group, and I found her through the Facebook group, and then I found her on Instagram. And what she does is she takes a deposit of £20, and that £20 goes towards your bill, right? So, when so I've gone to her a couple of times now, and when I had COVID, it was on the Saturday, and I think my appointment with her was on the Sunday. I was already feeling ill from the Friday. I got ill on the 18th, and then I progressively got worse. 3 COVID tests later, I'm testing positive. And the main reason I took the third one was because I was conscious of the fact that I had a nail appointment. I was thinking, I just want to make sure, because I'm not trying to give anyone COVID, right? So when I realised I had COVID, then I messaged her, I sent her a DM, and I said, I've got COVID, and I sent her a screenshot of my COVID test. And she was like, oh my God, she's had COVID before, am I okay, So I said, no, I feel like I've been hit by a truck, I'm deteriorating really badly. I said, obviously I can't make my appointment. And she said, okay, well, I'll cancel. However, you're not going to get your £20, you lose your £20. And I'm not going to sit here and lie to you. It was on principle. I was enraged. Because we all work hard for that £20. We all work hard for that £1. We all work hard for our coins. And this woman is basically telling me, because I have COVID, I lose my deposit. And it's on principle that I had a problem with him. 2 weeks prior, I got 2 separate DMs from 2 separate black women who had told me that they had experienced, obviously they went to her, and she's really good at her job and everything, but her attitude was really bad. One of them was saying that she tried to cancel, and the lady said that if you cancel, you're going to lose your £20, all this stuff. So I thought to myself, when I go to my appointment, I'm going to have the conversation with her, especially because, she did my nails, and she did my nails really well, and I shared my nails. I said, guys, I've got my nails done, and I, said, this is where I got them done. Because when I see good things, I want to share it with my audience, right? And then one of my friends said to me that she tried to change her appointment, right? And it was like a week before her appointment. And because she tried to change her appointment, the same nail tech says, well, if you change your appointment date, you lose your £20. So then my friend was like, hang on a minute, I've given you a week's notice. Like, how does that happen if I'm changing? I don't get it. Why would I lose my £20? So my friend hadn't told me this until after I told her my experience. Anyway, so my nail tech said about the £20, and I said, listen, that's just not the way to do business. I says, how can you keep my £20 because I've got COVID? That doesn't make sense to me. And she said, well, those are my terms and conditions. I said, but where are your terms and conditions? Tell me where they are. I said, because you don't use a booking system. People book you by sending you DMs. I said, something doesn't feel right here. I said, I've had 2 women approach me about your attitude and the way you've dealt with them, and I wanted to speak to you when I had my appointment. Obviously that hasn't happened, but now I'm having my experience with you that lends itself to the fact that your business ethics, the 2 and 2 is equaling 10. So I said, okay, cool. If you're okay with it, then I'll come to my appointment tomorrow then. I said, I'll come, I don't mind. If you're all right with that, that's fine. Now, guys, if you've had COVID, you know you ain't going nowhere. And I was being sarcastic to reiterate a point to her, to hone in a point to her, that I can't physically come there for my appointment because I'll be placing you and all your future customers at risk of COVID. So how can you take my £20 deposit? How can you do that? If you know that if I was to come, you'll get COVID. It doesn't make sense. Do you know this piece of shit posted on Instagram and said, I don't want anyone messaging me telling me you're coming to your appointment so that you don't lose your £20. And she started writing all of this shit. And I sent her another DM. I said, how dare you? You disgusting human being, how dare you? I says, what you're never going to do is send subliminals, because if I do it now, I will be told #be kind. If I do it now, I'll be told that I'm a bully and that I'm aggressive. But as a white woman, you get to lean into your fragility. I says, be a woman. Be a woman and stand by what you say and at me. At me. I said, don't you ever get it twisted with me. I'm not a pussy-o. I wrote it there. I'm not a pussy-o. Don't you ever. I said, these terms and conditions that you're talking about. I said, I've looked on my emails. I've looked on your Instagram. You don't have a website. Where are these terms and conditions? Are you making them up as you go along? I said, you call yourself a business. I said, but I've gone to Companies House to see this business because you said terms and conditions. So it's businesses that have terms and conditions. I said, you're not even registered at Companies House. So that tells me that you don't even have the right to operate this business. I said, actually, can you send me your insurance policies? Silence. I said, I want you to send me your insurance policy because you called yourself a business with T's and C's. That's why I was looking for these T's and C's. I've gone onto Companies House website because you've called yourself a company and you're collecting all this £20. I said, something fishy is going on. I smell a rat here. Something is not right. I said, you don't even have the right to operate from your house because I'm looking and I still can't find these terms and conditions. I said, you are not running a business. You're running a fraudulent enterprise. That's what you are running. And a dangerous one as that. I said, you are a absolutely phenomenal nail tech, but your business is wrong. I said, you're collecting everybody's £20 because I know at least 10 people have cancelled because of COVID. And I know it because I've gone into the Facebook group and I've seen it. And two people have complained about you. Secondly of all, you're trying to keep my £20 because I've got COVID. And then because I'm sarcastically trying to prove a point to you or make a point to you, you've decided to post something. I said, you've had COVID before. So how very well can I leave my house to even walk to the toilet, let alone come to your house? Use your brain. I said, I don't know if this is a language barrier. I don't know what this is. But don't you ever post about me again. I said, because the day you do it again, I will call trading standards and I will make sure they come and investigate and shut up shop. Because had I known that you didn't have the correct insurances and I come there and you cut my finger or you chop my finger off, I'm not covered. And it's because you're talking about these T's and C's that has caused me now to look deeper into your business. I said, it's not about the £20. It's about the principle. It's about business ethics and you don't have it. So I made a decision. I'm not spending my money there. And my friends, I warned them. I said, if you want to go there, she's a great nail tech. But you are going there assuming risk because of XYZ. The reason I tell you this is because we have to be very careful how we spend our money. If people want to treat us like shit, make us feel unwelcome, that hard work that we're doing to make that money, how can you then go investing in businesses that don't treat us with basic respect, but we're making these businesses richer? Before you even calculate how much this woman is charging you, I want you to calculate all the £20 that she's collecting. It's fraud. I put it to you, she doesn't even have an accountant, a VAT number, but she's adding VAT. I'm telling you a fact. Because if you're not registered at Companies House, your company don't exist, but you're charging us VAT. So who's claiming the VAT? Because the taxman ain't claiming that. Fraud. But the very people that are investing in your business is the people that you're treating like shit. I said to her, please, and I wrote it there, and I said to her in the DMs, I said, I want you to screenshot this whole thing, and I want you to repost it, and I want you to at me. At me, I want you to. I genuinely want you to. Because I am not the one or the two. Then she came back to me, she says, oh, but she is registered as a mobile business. I said, where? Where? In Lithuania? In Portugal? In Nigeria? In Amsterdam? Where? Because it's not here in England. Don't try that. I said, I'm not stupid. I'm highly educated and I'm highly knowledgeable. I am a business owner of 2 businesses. So I know how this works. Don't try it with me. I said, it's ignorance that is causing people to pay you £20, lose £20, pay you again the £20 in addition to the cost of the nails. I said, you're so good at what you do, but you let yourself down. You let yourself down. And I genuinely think that she had that energy for me because I was a black woman. I genuinely think she had that same energy for the other women because they're black women. I genuinely think. Because you see, I tend to find in that industry, when it's white women are quite passive, so they'll accept that £20 business. We won't. Not all of them white women will accept it, but most of them. But you see, this is the thing about business and how we spend our money. There comes a point where we have to be accountable, where we spend our money, how we view business, how we invest in business, how we invest in ourselves, how we define success, how we see success, how we understand that business works. Pretty Little Thing, to me, is a problematic brand. I find them problematic. Anything that you have seen post the researchers of Black Lives Matter is either been things that my friends have bought for me or Kay. Because I find PLT a problematic brand. I think that from a business perspective, it was a good business move for Molly May to be a creative director. But I do wonder, aside from her influence and numbers and following, what credentials she had that qualified her. Can you see, my fellow queens? You don't wait to be qualified to be able to be considered for a role. Some of us are dulling on waiting. And we've had this discussion before. But these white people provide an example to us each and every day of some of the things that we are falsely thinking that actually is not true. You don't have to wait for 10 years experience to be considered as qualified. You just need some experience. You need to be able to sell your skills. Not sell yourself. Sell your skills. You have to be able to position yourself. And how do we do that? Understanding when your assignment is done in an organization and you need to move on. I'm not going to sit here and, pretend, and I never have done, that I've had it easy. I've not had it easy. I've had it really tough, and also battling mental health as well. It's been a lot, yeah? Equally as well, to an extent, I can see within myself where maybe I've had certain advantages. So, for example, maybe some people could see the fact that my dad came over to this country for a better life and ensured that, I went to school and had an education as an advantage. Fair enough. But I was always at a disadvantage too, because I had a learning difficulty that wasn't identified until I was 21. And I definitely think that when we talk about advantages in life and things like that, let's not get caught up on the advantages on a basic level. I think we need to concentrate on the societal advantages that people have that are endemic to how we as a society see success and experience it. It shouldn't go above anyone's head that as a black woman, our 24 hours a day is completely different. There's things that I talk about on my platform and some people are shocked, but who are not shocked? My fellow black queens, because we know what it is that we experience and what we have to go through. It's really scary to see how easy it is for white people to trigger us. It's scary to me because we are then being distracted and we're not concentrating on what we need to do to get to where we need to go. And equally as well, I do generally think that some people have an unrealistic view of life, and unrealistic in a sense that sometimes I feel like people buy into this fantasy that is created on social media or even on YouTube itself. And when the reality hits of what actual life is, a lot of those people are realizing that bubble, that thing that was created was to keep you distracted from your own greatness. We all work hard. We do. We all work hard. And I say when I say we all work hard, for some people it's even difficult to wake up in the morning. There is a level of hard work that goes into remaining mentally sane in a society that is basically telling us that we're not wanted. So Molly May's words were damaging. Molly May's words were out of line and bordering on disrespectful. But my question is, what did you learn from that interview? If you learnt nothing, it's because you're still consumed in the emotion of being triggered. You have to have picked up a few things from that interview, because I've picked up 2 pages and I considered myself an educated woman. I considered myself an informed woman. I consider myself somebody who's able to learn from anyone, irrespective of their age, irrespective of their background. So what did you learn? It's important for me, I felt, to come on here and talk about that particular interview from the perspective of a fellow Black queen as myself. And also because I think we have to get under the weeds, and we have to get to a point of understanding how society views us and how we have to package ourselves to be able to get the success that we desire. And I'm not sitting here to say that everyone's going to be successful and everyone's going to be this, but we have to position ourselves, we have to educate ourselves, and we have to be informed. This is the reason why I come here every Tuesday. This is the reason why I open up for dilemmas, and I discuss and I share experiences, I share your experiences, I share my own. This is the reason why I come here every week, to be vulnerable with you guys and be honest with you guys. And I'm hoping that you guys are taking what I'm teaching you and putting it into practice. And a lot of you are. But we can't be distracted by the likes of Molly May. We can't be. Because I'm telling you now, the audience that she's talking to picked what they needed to pick. And a lot of them maybe are from the same advantage point as she was. But then my thing is, if we consider ourselves not on the same advantage position, then my question is, what is it that you can take from what she has said to place yourself in a position to progress from where you are? We know that there are successful Black women and successful Black men in our community. We know there's not a lot in comparison, but we do have that. We do have a lot of people who have come from difficult backgrounds, who have not had the greatest start in life. We understand and we know that. But my question is, you have to now start centering yourself in the success you want to see. We have to now get to a point of understanding how triggering Black women is used by many businesses and organisations as a marketing tool. What's the end goal here? Do you think I don't get exhausted and I don't get tired? Because I do. Do you think sometimes I just go to sleep and I think, not today, and I lose out a day? Yeah, I go through that too. Last year, I worked the hardest that I have ever worked in my entire career. And I'm going to get to a point where this year we're going to share certain things. And I keep saying this to you guys. The reason you're going to be shocked is because the reality of how hard we have to work in comparison to our white counterparts, it's like night and day. We literally burn the candle on both sides. And this is why last year, I felt very disrespected when one donkey came into my DMs to tell me that I was lucky. What? I was lucky, was I? To clean people's toilets, to unplug and unclog shit, to be able to put myself through law school, was I? I was lucky to work mad shifts, mad hours. I'm talking between 6 to 12 hour shifts. Go home, have a shower, change my clothes and go straight to law school. Was I? I was lucky to have dyslexia and not know until I was 21, was I? I was lucky to grow up poor, was I? Lights out when the money runs out on the electric key, was I? Don't go there with me. That's not luck. There was no luck involved there. There was none. I've been through hell. There's things that I have seen that I probably will never even talk about. So let's not go there. There is no luck involved when it comes to us as Black women. It's sheer hard work, dedication, sacrifice, focus. There is no luck. We don't benefit from luck. When you have racist societal structures, there's no luck in there. Now, I'm not sitting here saying that we all start from the same place, but let's not overlook the sacrifices that as Black women we have had to make to get to any destination. Let's focus on studying the way that white people and non-Black people have been able to attain success, taking their advantages to one side, but understanding the blueprint of business and the success and the mechanisms and things that they've had to use. There are so many things to learn from Molly May's interview with Steve Bartlett on the Diary of a CEO. There are so many things for us to be able to learn by doing our due diligence at work and understanding how these managers are managing and understanding how these businesses are operating. We have to be the architects of our success. We have to be clear on what our mission is. We have to understand that we are the authors of our success, no one else. We have to accept and understand the constraints that we are working under in a society that's structurally racist. But what we cannot do, what we will not do, is continue to be the marketing strategy for the likes of Molly May to make money off our rage, or as a result of us being triggered. We're focusing on the wrong things. We're spending too much time being angry. You're spending too much time. Be annoyed at what she said, but be motivated and be driven by understanding that we are not her audience. She ain't talking to us. You think it's an accident that she mentioned Beyonce? Is that what you think? Why didn't she mention Madonna? Why did she mention Beyonce? Come on, let's start getting our brain into gear. There's so many people that woman could have mentioned. Why did she mention Beyonce? Come on, queens. Come on, we can do better than that. We've been doing better than that. This is 2022. This is January, honey. We haven't even finished January, and already, while I did. No. I can't be used in that way. So I hope that you've learned something from this episode. I did want to ensure that I addressed kind of Molly May's interview and really give my opinion and my stance on kind of where I stand in terms of what she said, but remove more, like my focus isn't on her, and I think we need to just stop distracting ourselves with her, right? We understand advantage, we understand positioning, we understand privilege and the different dimensions of privilege, okay? So let us focus on what is important here. And that's all I'm trying to say in this episode. I'm not here to debate anybody. I'm not here to talk about the pros and cons. I'm just not here to do that. I'm here for the advancements of my fellow Black queens. I'm here to pour into my community, and I'm here to invest in the success of my community. That's why I do what I do. This podcast is 2 Black women, 4 Black women, about Black women. And we have to find and continue to find our voices. And I found mine, and I'm using it through the podcast. And I'm hoping that you guys took what needed to be taken out of this podcast episode. For some of you maybe who are still triggered by what Molly May has said, my advice would be to do a deep dive and understand why you're so triggered, to understand the reason why, and then unpack that. I'm going to draw this episode to a close, and what I will say is, as always, I enjoy the podcast, I enjoy recording, I enjoy tackling certain issues. There's a lot of things that have happened over the last few months in terms of employment tribunals and the outcomes, and I really want to discuss it here because I think it's really important. Also as well, last week's episode, We Are Gathered Here Today, and I spoke about sickness policy and stuff like that. You guys loved that episode. I got so many DMs, I've got so many emails. A lot of you used a lot of the advice and obviously the letter that I dictated over the podcast to deal with some of your sickness situations, and the testimonies that have come back have been absolutely amazing, and I'm really, really proud and happy that I could use that episode as a tool for you guys to then use as a tool to actually change your situation at work. Something someone said to me recently is, if you're ill and you go back to work, the assumption is you're well. That's quite a powerful statement. Think about it. If you are ill and you go into work, the assumption is you are well. I'm going to leave that there. Spotify have introduced a new rating system, kind of like what they do for Apple Podcasts, where you can rate your podcast and review, and they're doing it on Spotify. So all my Spotify listeners, I'd really appreciate it if you go on Spotify and rate and review the podcast episode. It really does help me out, and it will help other listeners who maybe are new listeners, or people who find the podcast and want to listen to it and are guided by ratings and reviews. So it really does help me out. I also want to say, if you haven't already or you don't already, make sure you go onto YouTube. I have a YouTube channel called At Home with Toya, where I post bi-weekly vlogs. And there are some interesting vlogs coming up over the next couple of weeks I'm really excited for as well. If you are interested in any of the masterclasses, then you know they are all available on the website toytalks.com. In the next couple of weeks, there are going to be 2 new masterclasses, and by the end of the year, there will be 3 new masterclasses. Please keep your eye out for the remote masterclass I'm going to do on employment contracts. That is coming soon. I've almost finished scoping it out. So I will be advertising where it will take place remotely, how tickets can be bought, how long it will be, and what topics are covered. If you have a work-related or life-related dilemma that you would like us to address, your anonymity will be protected. My email address is hello@toytalks.com. For those of you who want to follow me on social media, I'm very active on Instagram. My personal Instagram page is Toya_Washington. The Toy Talks podcast, of course, has an Instagram page as well. It is Toya_Talks. If you would also like to follow me on TikTok, it is Toy Washington, all one word. I will be creating some new content for TikTok shortly. If you want to follow me on Snapchat, my handle is Toya Washington. I am so blessed to be able to come here every week. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you if you're a new listener. We hope to see you again next week. My name is Toya Washington, and you have been listening to the Toy Talks podcast.